let me present the screen now. Is it visible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let us see now what are the various components of any industrial building. So as I have shown you here in this diagram, the major component of this industrial building is this frame. Now this is actually called as a pre-engineered building, PEB, which is having a shape similar to the truss. Instead of this PEB, most of the structures have used the trusses. PEB is a relatively new concept. Say from last 7 to 8 years, the PEB concept has been arrived, and many of the industries are now constructing their shed by using PEB, pre-engineered building. So it consists of again a frame which is having a shape similar to the truss, but it is not a truss because it requires, if you consider or when you imagine any kind of a truss, it is an assembly of different steel sections, and it requires number of members, and because of that the total weight of the truss also increases and the cost also increases. So PEB, pre-engineered building, or this PEB frame is a economical alternative for the trusses. So most of the industries are going with this. Its design requirements are different. You cannot design PEB structure similar to the truss. Okay, but this is what is a industrial shade, and I have already discussed about you regarding the gantry girder in the last week. So let us see now the various components of a industrial building. It consists of a roof system, columns, gantry girder, beams, vertical claddings, girt, bracing system, and column footing. So the entire industrial shade is actually resting on columns. The columns are resting on footing, and these columns supports the entire roofing system. Now roofing system again has a different components. The columns also support the gantry girders, beams. The vertical claddings are nothing but the walls of the structure. These claddings are provided to cover or to enclose the entire structure from the external side. So these are the vertical claddings. Girts, bracing systems, these are used to support the various members in the industrial building. So let us see the various components of roofing system. Roofing system consists of a roofing material, that is a corrugated sheet which is provided to cover the entire building. मराठीत म्हणायचं तर पत्रा, पत्रे, कुठल्याही बिल्डिंगचे पत्रे म्हणजे these are the roofing material. Sheets, steel sheets. Second is purlin. The roofing material or roofing sheets are resting on the purlins. Purlins are provided to support, in other words, purlins are provided to support the roofing material. Purlins are resting on trusses. Truss itself consists of combination of all these: top chord member, which are also called as principal rafter, bottom chord member, which are also called as main tie, strut, sling, sag tie. These are again the different names of the various members of the truss. And finally, the bracings. The bracings may be provided at to connect the top chord members, or they may be provided to connect the bottom chord members. Now these are provided normally to avoid the buckling, or to avoid, or to keep the whatever the shape of the structure we require as it is, and also to carry the sum of the forces and vibrations through the bracings. What is truss? Definition is written here. Somebody can simply read. Anyone from you? What is truss?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. A true truss consists of a straight member connected at joints. Trusses are composed of triangles because of the structural stability of the shape and design. A triangle is the simplest geometric figure that will not change shape when the lengths of the sides are fixed.
Yes. Okay. So truss is actually a assembly of the members, or different members are connected together at the joints to form a truss. Now there are different shapes of the trusses. Sometimes you can see a rectangular truss, a square truss, a trapezoidal shape of a truss, but the most commonly used shape of a truss is a triangle, because triangle is a very basic geometrical shape, which is stable, which is a stable shape. And when the length of the sides are fixed, normally the geometry of the triangle does not change. So it is a very simple geometry, a simple shape of a geometry, and widely used for making the trusses. Okay, now this is a simple definition of a truss. But actually, what is a truss? It is actually a structure comprising one or more triangular units. It does not consist only of one triangle. One triangle means only three members. Truss is not a structure consisting of three members only, but it consists of number of members. All these members are connected together in such a fashion that different triangular units are formed. Why triangular? Again, because it is a very basic, simple, but stable geometrical shape. So, triangular units are used. So, it consists of one or more triangular units constructed with straight members whose ends are connected at joints, referred to as nodes. These joints are also called as nodes. Nodes is a very widely used word in case of softwares. When you use any particular software and when you want to prepare any basic geometry of any structure, the connections of the different members are identified as nodes. Okay, external forces and reaction to those forces are considered to act only at the nodes and result in forces in the members which are either tensile or compressive forces. Now this is very important. When you consider any truss, all the members are connected together at the joint, and each and every joint is considered as a hinge support. It is considered as a hinge joint or a pinned joint. Now, you already have learned in engineering mechanics that whenever there is a hinge support, that joint is able to rotate, but there is no movement developed at that joint. Am I right? Hinge support or hinge joint is a joint where or the joint cannot move in vertical direction or cannot move in horizontal direction, or in other term it cannot move at all in any direction. Okay, but it can rotate. So what are the restrictions at that joint? It get or it gives one reaction at a certain direction. If the same reaction, if you resolve in vertical and horizontal component, we term it as there are two reaction. One is horizontal and one is vertical. Because the reaction we are resolving in orthogonal system. If we say that there is a reaction, it will have certain angle. That reaction will make certain angle with the horizontal. So there are two unknowns: the magnitude of the reaction and its direction. Okay, if you resolve the same reaction into vertical and horizontal direction, you have already fixed its direction. So there are again two unknown: vertical force, force in vertical direction, and force in horizontal direction. There is no moment because that joint is able to rotate. So movements are not restricted. So we do not get any reaction in terms of movement at a hinge joint. So each and every joint of a truss is termed as a hinge joint or a pinned connection. And because of this, the forces developed in the member are always the axial forces. Because the joint can move, joint can rotate, not move, it can rotate. So the members are not carrying any movement. Okay, the members are only carrying the axial forces. This is the most important assumption made in the truss system. Okay, because assumption means actually the connections are made in such a fashion that the forces developed in the members are always in axial manner. No movement or shear force is developed in any member. Okay, so that's why all these members are called as the members subjected to axial forces. Now the axial force have only two nature: either it is a tensile force or a compressive force. That is a force which is acting towards the joint or the force which is acting away from the joint. And because of that we can define two nature: either tensile or compression. When the force is acting away from the joint, the member is actually getting compressed. So there is a compressive forces in the member. And if the force is acting towards a joint, the member is getting stretched or elongated. So there is a tensile force in the member. Okay, so only two types of forces are there, either tensile or compressive, in the member of the truss, and each and every joint is treated as a hinge joint. Now, these are the various types of trusses. You can see that there is a basic triangle, a big triangle, which consists of different small triangular units. So, how these triangular units are formed, depending upon that, there are different geometrical shapes or different geometries or geometrical configurations we are getting. And based on that, the different names are given to different geometrical configurations. Okay, so this is the most commonly used Pratt type of truss, that it consists of vertical and inclined members along with the outer triangle. Now outer triangle means these are the top chord members, which are also called as principal rafter, and this is the bottom chord member, which is also called as a tie member. Okay, now the principal rafter and tie, these are the widely or commonly used terms or terminologies in case of steel structures. If the same truss you are learning as a part of building material or building construction, you will use the top chord member and bottom chord members widely. Okay, so here for SDD2 we will be using rafter and tie member as the common terminology for top chord and bottom chord member. Okay, these are the vertical members. Now vertical members are almost or most of the time are subjected to compressive action, so these are also called as strut. So strut is a member which is always carrying a compressive axial compression or a compressive force. The member which always carry axial compression, it is called as strut. The member which always carry axial tension, it is called as tie. Okay, these are the common terminology. So when I will call a word strut, it means you have to understand that there is a compressive force. When we use a word tie member, you have to understand that it consists of a tensile force or it carries a tensile force. Okay, these are the common terms which are used in design of steel structures. Now this is another type of a structure, Howe truss. These two are most commonly used in practice. Then it is a Fink truss, fan truss, Fink fan combination, then mansard truss. Now if you go on increasing the triangular units inside this outer triangle, the configuration becomes more and more complicated. Obviously the analysis required for such stress, it requires more time, because we need to solve more number of joints, and sometimes the complications increases such fashion that the entire truss becomes indeterminate. I hope all are aware of the concept of determinacy, indeterminate structure and determinate structure. So can anybody quickly define what do you understand by determinate structure?
And for which the equation satisfies m equals to 2j minus 3.
This is with respect to truss you are talking.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in general, I'm asking the definition of determinate structure, whether it is a truss
If we
or
can find the
whether it is a
if
frame.
we can find the uh, if we can find the unknowns using the given reactions, then it is determinate.
Given
Ma'am,
reaction.
if the number of
Given
unknowns are
reactions,
more than the equations available, then it is
Huh?
indeterminate. And if
Correct.
the number of unknowns are less than the equations available, then it is known as determinate structure.
Second definition is wrong. When the number of unknowns are more than the number of equations available, it is indeterminate. That is correct. But when the number of unknowns are equal to number of equations, the structure is determinate. Your definition is number of unknowns are less than number of equation, your structure becomes unstable. Okay, your see, number of unknowns should be always equal to number of equations, then and then your structure will remain in equilibrium all the time, it will remain stable. If number of unknowns are less than the number of equation, normally the structure becomes unstable. Okay, for equilibrium the number of equations must be equal to number of unknowns. Okay, so these are the definitions for determinate and indeterminate structures. So this is one type of a truss. For truss, your friend has defined the indeterminacy or determinacy. M equal to, what is that formula? M equal
2j
to,
minus 3.
huh.
2j
So
minus 3.
what is M?
Number of members.
Number of members. What is J?
Joints.
Number of
Number of
joints.
joints.
Number of
Joints.
joints.
Why 2? 2J na? So why 2? Why not 3J? Why not 4J?
A member is having can have a 2 joints, not 3.
Okay. Why 3?
नाही नाही 2j minus n असतं ते आणि n is number of reactions.
पण मग ट्रसला तुम्ही 3 म्हणताय ना, 2J minus 3.
हा मग एक मोमेंट वर्टिकल आणि हॉरिझॉन्टल असे 3 रिएक्शन्स.
हा. सो actually 3 reactions म्हणण्यापेक्षा you should call it as a 3 equilibrium equations. We have 3 equilibrium equations, summation fx equal to 0, summation fy equal to 0, and summation of moments equal to 0. Okay, so 3 number is for the number of equations, not for reactions. Reactions कितीही असू शकतात. It depends upon the support, right? तुम्ही कंटिन्युअस बीम घेतलात, मला आता समजा तुमचे नंबर ऑफ स्पॅन्स 5 आहेत, किती रिएक्शन्स आले? For a beam, it's a continuous beam and there are 5 spans in a beam. किती आले number of reactions?
6.
6. 15 कुठलं काय काढले रे बाळा?
किती 5 स्पॅन आहेत का?
हा, 5 spans आहेत.
मॅम 6 आहेत.
6. हा, we are assuming that each joint is a hinge support. हा, if you consider one support as fixed, मग तुमचे ते number of reactions परत वाढतील. Okay, so number of supports, depending upon number of supports, your number of reactions will vary. So 3 is a number associated with number of equilibrium equations.
मॅम पण
Yes.
बीमच्या ओरिएंटेशन नुसार रिएक्शन्स व्हेरी होतील ना, नंबर ऑफ रिएक्शन्स व्हेरी होतील ना.
होतात, correct. That's why orientation as well as the support. Okay, and orientation changes based on the support only, right? Is it clear? Hello? Who was asking
Yes,
me
ma'am.
this doubt? Name, please.
येस मॅम, क्लिअर झालं.
Is it Vinay or Omkar?
साहिल.
Sahil. Okay, Sahil. So, number of reaction depends upon the orientation, as you said, and orientation actually depends upon the support system. So, 3 number, why there is 3 number in the formula? It is because of the number of equilibrium equation. Now, there are some compatibility equations also there, right? And by making use of these compatible equations, we can determine or we can find out the reactions or unknown forces in the member. So those are the compatibility equations, and we require those compatibility equation to solve the indeterminate structures. Okay, so basically we consider any particular structure as a determinate structure when we can find out the unknown forces in a given structure simply by making use of 3 equilibrium equations. If we require the compatibility equation, it means that structure is a indeterminate structure. Okay, so in case of trusses also, if we are not able to find out the forces in all the members of the trusses, simply by making use of 3 equilibrium equation, we call it as a indeterminate truss. Okay, now this is one particular configuration. This is the another, which are called as the parallel chord trusses. Okay, in this, the top chord and bottom chord members are parallel to each other, and that's why the name is parallel chord trusses. In the first type, it is a triangle, so the principal rafter are inclined and tie member are horizontal, whereas here the tie member is also horizontal and principal rafter is also horizontal. These are parallel to each other, and the members in between these two members, that is the rafter and tie, the other members are organized in a different orientation or different configuration, forming the different configuration of the trusses. So this is a floor girder, which is commonly used type of a parallel truss. Lattice girder, it is again a very commonly used parallel chord truss. Then diamond type of a web, Warren truss, K-type truss. So diamond and K-type, if you can see, the number of members are more and they become the undeterminate trusses because it cannot be solved by using your equation m equal to 2j minus 3. Okay, because the number of members are more, or I can say left hand side is more than right hand side of the equation. This is another type of a truss, trapezoidal truss, having a trapezoid like a shape, and the principal rafter and tie members are not connected to each other directly. If you consider the parallel cord also, these are not connected to each other directly, but in case of triangular, they are directly connected to each other. Trapezoidal truss is like a triangular, but the members are not connected to each other directly. At a certain distance, they are there, located there. That's why it is making a shape of trapezoid. So this is a trapezoidal. This is a trapezoidal parallel chord truss. The shape is like a trapezoid, but the top chord and bottom chord members are parallel to each other. So this is a trapezoidal parallel chord truss, whereas this is a simply trapezoidal truss. Both these trusses are indeterminate type of a trusses. Okay. Now, besides these types of trusses, whatever may be the type of trusses, some of the common terminologies which are used for trusses are pitch of the truss. Pitch means it is actually the ratio of height of the truss to the span. So if I will go back to this triangular truss, whatever is the height, the maximum height is at the center. So this height divided by the span of the truss, it gives me the pitch. Pitch means actually it is defining the slope of this principal rafter member. Okay, so pitch is nothing but the slope of the truss. In case of parallel chord, there will be no slope, but still there will be a pitch. Okay, pitch of the truss. So that's why the word is used, pitch of the truss. Now there are certain limitations for providing a pitch. Means how much should be the ratio of the height of the truss to the span of the truss. There are limitations because the trusses are actually supporting your roofing material. Now, we do not provide a single truss in any industrial shed. We provide series of trusses. And between two consecutive trusses or above the two consecutive trusses, there is a roofing material. Now, this roofing material, परत मी म्हणते मराठीमध्ये त्याला पत्रा म्हणतो आपण, सिम्पली अ शीट, roofing sheet or roofing material. Now the roofing sheet is made by using different materials. Roofing sheet may be made by using steel, or roofing sheet may be made by using concrete or asbestos sheet. Okay, so depending upon the change in the material, the behavior of that sheet changes. See, if we are using asbestos sheets, AC sheets, these are called as AC sheets. As the material is not ductile, if the support to this sheet provided is at a larger span, the deflection of the sheet may cause cracking of the sheet. Okay, so such sheets which has a lesser capacity to deflect, these are called as brittle sheet or brittle cladding. Whereas the sheets which has a good capacity to deflect, or especially these sheets are made by using a ductile material like a steel sheet or a metal sheet. Okay, so such sheets are called as the elastic cladding. Now the elastic cladding, brittle cladding, all these terms are associated with deflection criteria. So whenever you learn about the limit state of serviceability, there are limitations to the deflection, and in that table you will find out these words: elastic cladding, brittle cladding. So which cladding is elastic, which cladding is brittle, it depends upon which material we are using in the sheet. So there are two widely used sheets in practice. One is the GI sheet, as I have written here. GI sheet means galvanized iron sheet. It is a metal sheet. Okay, it has a good ductility. So the pitch we can provide as 1:6. Okay, 1:6 is the minimum pitch we can provide with GI sheet. But if AC sheets are there, the pitch is can be provided as 1/12. Okay, AC sheets means asbestos corrugated sheets. Asbestos corrugated sheets. Okay, AC sheets are brittle. the material is brittle, whereas GI sheets are ductile. So these are called as brittle cladding, these are called as elastic cladding. So when the cladding is elastic, deflection limits are increased. We can go for a higher value of deflection. If the brittle cladding is there, we have to limit the deflection to a lower value. So the pitches also are different. Okay. This is about pitch of the truss. Then spacing of the trusses. The spacing also has a limitation depending upon what is the span we are providing. So spacing is nothing but the distance between two consecutive trusses, and for 15-meter span, the 3 to 4.5 meter spacing can be adopted. For 15 to 30 meter span of the truss, 4.5 to 6 meter spacing of the trusses can be adopted. Again, if I will go on increasing the spacing between the trusses, these sheets will deflect more and more, because these sheets are actually resting on the trusses. The two edges of the sheets are resting on two trusses, two consecutive trusses. Okay, so span and spacing of the trusses are having a direct connection with the sheets, roofing material and its type. Is it clear? These two are the most important parameters, and if we do not care about adopting a specific value for pitch and spacing of the trusses, our whole further design may go wrong. Wrong means unsafe. We cannot say wrong, but it becomes unsafe if we do not follow these guidelines while adopting pitch of the truss or spacing between the trusses. Is it clear? Now the next important components of a truss system is called as a purlin. Purlins are actually the members which are resting above the truss, and the function of the purlin is to hold the roofing sheets. Roofing sheets are connected to the purlin, and then purlins are connected to the trusses. So whatever the load acting on industrial shade is acting actually on the roofing sheet first. From the roofing sheet, it is transferred to the purlins. From purlins, then it gets transferred to the truss, and from truss, then it gets transferred to the column. This is the load transfer system in case of industrial shade. Okay. Now purlins, these are always, as far as possible, should be located on the panel points. Now what is panel point? Panel points mean a point where there is a joint in the truss. So the purlin should be located at the joints of the truss members. They should not be placed on the truss member. If we place it on the truss member, the truss members are subjected to moments along with the axial forces. So to avoid that, the purlin should be placed on the joints of the trusses. Now again, as the roofing sheets are resting on the purlin, the spacing between purlin is also important, because the roofing sheet is resting on a purlin. So each roofing sheet again will get deflect between the two consecutive purlins. So the deflection control criteria we have to apply or adopt here. Again, that's why the spacing between the purlins are having certain limitations. Okay, so that limitation or that range varies from 1.35 to 2 meters. Two consecutive purlins should not be spaced more than 2 meter or maximum up to 2 meters if we are using GI sheets, and maximum 1.35 meter if we are using AC sheets. Again, these are the guidelines. We have to follow them strictly. Otherwise, your roofing material will show more deflection. The load transfer will not be proper. Okay. So the spacing between the purlins, spacing between trusses, pitch of the trusses, whenever we adopt, we have to follow these guidelines. Okay. See, this is one cross-sectional view. This is the elevation of the industrial shade, I can see. Okay, these vertical lines are actually columns, okay, or walls. On these columns or walls, the entire truss is resting. The black color is a truss. Above this truss, the L-shaped blue color members you can see. These are nothing but your purlins. Okay, all these are the purlins, and above this the red color lines are drawn. These are actually your roofing sheets. Roofing sheets. So here is a roofing sheet which is resting on your purlin. Purlin is resting on your truss. Similarly on the other side also. Okay, this entire system, this top system is called as a roofing system. This is called as roofing system, which consists of a truss, purlin, and a sheet, roofing sheet. Okay, these are the columns which are resting on the footing. Now, the different terms associated, which right now we have seen, that this is the span of the truss. Now, similarly, this is one truss. Behind this, there will be the another truss with the same system. So, the distance between these two trusses is a spacing, which we can observe in the plan. So, just imagine a plan, or imagine you are observing an industrial shade from the top. You are looking to the industrial shade from the top. So, it will look like this. These are lines are actually representing your column, actually a beam which is connecting all the columns. Okay, and this black color horizontal line is representing one truss. This is the second truss, this is the third truss, fourth truss. So the distance between these two consecutive trusses is actually your spacing of the truss. Now on all these trusses, the purlins are there. So these blue color angle sections are representing purlins. So from the top or in the plan, it will look like a single line. So this blue color line is nothing but a single purlin. So this is first purlin, second, third, fourth. So horizontal distance between these two purlins is nothing but spacing between purlins. Okay, so this horizontal spacing between the purlins and this vertical spacing between the trusses, these are having a limitation. And these limitations are because of the deflection of this roofing material. The roofing material should not get deflected. Now, practically how these are installed? See, between the two purlins, there is one roofing sheet. So if I will consider only this particular rectangular portion, this particular portion is consist of one roofing sheet. This is second, this is third, this is fourth. Okay, in this fashion, all the roofing sheets are placed between the purlins and between two trusses. So in the same fashion, between these two trusses, again one roofing sheet, second, third, like that. If you observe any industrial shade, if you are any nearby your home, any industrial shade is present, simply a shade is present, you can observe how these roofing sheets are provided or attached to the top or to the purlin of your shade. Okay, such shades are available. If you will be in the college right now, then I can easily show you, because we have two shades, or rather three shades in our college. One shade is of our workshop building, where you have done your concrete technology or MOS 1 practicals, our material testing lab. So that workshop building is nothing but like a industrial shed only. It consists of trusses. Our Celtic canteen building, it also consists of truss. It is again an entire steel structure. Canteen is a steel structure. And the similar shed is also erected behind E building, close to the Suvarnayug Bank. So that there is one shed which consists of the roofing material, truss and column. Okay, so these three different shades you can see in the premises of our college campus. Now, as the colleges are not open, you have to observe these structures nearby your home only. Whenever you observe any shade, you just observe the roofing system, how the roof is provided to the specific shade. Okay, even you can observe a simple shade for say parking area or cycle stand. Normally the shades are provided in the same fashion. Okay, so if possible to observe such shades nearby your home, you can please visit and observe how these different components are connected together. Is it clear to you? Any doubts in this? Because this will be your first sheet. This is going to be
No,
your
ma'am.
first sheet. A specific group will be provided with specific type of a truss, and this diagram you have to represent in your first sheet. So any doubts in this?
यासाठी काही
No, ma'am.
कॅल्क्युलेशन लागत नाहीत ना, फक्त आपण शीटच्या डायमेन्शन वरून स्पेसिंग ठरवणार पर्लिनचं.
नाही, मी सांगितलं ना, कॅल्क्युलेशन म्हणजे हे गाईडलाईन्स. You have to
हा,
decide
ते
all
बरोबर
these distances based on these guidelines. Okay? How you will decide the purlin, spacing between the purlin, spacing between the trusses, rise, this height of the truss, you have to decide based on the pitch value. What is the span of the truss? Span will be given to you. You have to decide the pitch then. Okay? Material, roofing material will be given to you. If I will say that, okay, use GI sheet as a roofing material, then accordingly you have to adopt the spacing between purlins and trusses. If I will say no, instead of GI use AC sheet, then you have to consider the guidelines for AC roofing material. Okay? So you have to make use of these guidelines, whatever we have discussed, to draw this initial diagram. Okay?
ओके.
Any further doubts? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let us move ahead to the various loads now. 15 minutes early. Okay. Different loads which are considered normally for design of industrial sheds are the dead load, live load, wind load, snow load, and earthquake load. Okay. Sometimes the crane load also we need to consider if we are constructing a very huge industrial shed. Okay, and the crane, if it is installed permanently, then that load also we need to consider. For your syllabus, we have considered only these first three loads: dead load, live load, and wind load. How the dead load is to be calculated, how the live load is to be considered, and how the wind loads are to be calculated, which are acting on the industrial shed, that we have to consider. Now, in case of the areas, cold regions, where the snowfall is expected, the snow load is also we have to consider, because that will get accumulated on the roof top. So that load also we have to consider. And the last one is the earthquake load. In earthquake prone zone, we have to consider the earthquake load also. Okay? And earthquake loads are normally considered if the height of the entire structure is much more large. And again, if your structure is getting erected in a very highly earthquake prone zone, like zone 4 or zone 5, then we have to consider the earthquake loads. Otherwise, most of the time, the industrial sheds are always designed for wind load. Because if you imagine, or if you just think, most of the time, the industrial areas are developed outside the city areas. Very less industrial structures or industrial area we can find out within the structure. These are outskirts of the cities areas, where the wind velocity of wind is little bit higher as compared to the interior part of the city. Because as you move on towards the interior part of the city, the obstructions, we go on to more and more constructions, we go on more and more planting the trees, so there will be the obstruction of wind flow, and hence the wind velocity reduces, and the intensity of wind also reduces when you consider a very interior part of a city. And when we go outside of the city, the wind velocity goes on little bit increasing, because the obstruction to the wind flow is reduced. Okay, so if industrial sheds are erected, normally the huge industrial sheds are erected outside of the cities. There the wind load becomes prominent, or it remains present all the time. So all the sheds are normally designed for wind load. So these are the common loads for which the industrial shed is designed. Is it clear? Types of
Yes,
loads.
ma'am.
Types
Yes,
of loads.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this is just a diagram showing the purlin, how the purlins are resting. So this is actually one top chord member of your truss, and the purlins are resting on the top chord member in this direction. Now all these diagrams, whatever are shown here, these are the cold form sections. Okay, because the shape, cross-sectional shape is very different. Nah? This is Z shape, this is C shape, this is also again a C shape. So when we construct or when we use the purlins made of hot rolled steel sections, we have very limited shapes, cross-sectional shapes like I, angle or C. These are the three only shapes which we use for purlins, cross-sectional shapes. But if you are using for cold form section, any desired cross-sectional shape can be obtained in case of cold form section. For SDD2, we are not designing cold form sections. We are designing hot rolled steel sections only. Okay, so this is just a diagram to show how the purlins are resting on the principal rafter. Okay. Now this part I will come little later because it has directly a relation with design of beams. Purlins are actually the flexural members. These are to be designed like a beam. Okay. These are some of the very initial information related to purlin. So the spacing of the trusses is the span of the purlin. So if I will go back to this diagram, these are the two trusses and a purlin is resting on these two trusses. So these meeting points are nothing but the support for a single purlin. And we do not provide a huge large single member like this. This is one purlin, this is second purlin, this is third purlin. But practically when you design, when you consider, this is considered as a single purlin. Now why this is so? Why we call that this is one purlin? Because the design of each part of this purlin will remain same if you provide a same spacing of trusses throughout the length of your industrial shade. Okay, and it is always done. You will never find out that the spacing between two consecutive trusses is different, is adopted different throughout the length of the industrial shade. It is kept same. This is because the spacing between two trusses defines the span of a purlin. So this is actually one purlin treated as a beam. It is treated like a beam only. Okay, so this is one beam and these are the two supports. So if I want to design this part of a beam for a given span, the same span if I will keep here, the design for this portion and this portion will remain same because the loading acting is same and the span is also same. And that becomes easy for the design as well as for actual implementation also. So the spacing between trusses, the spacing between consecutive trusses in any given industrial shade is always kept same so that the span of the purlin can be provided same throughout the length of the structure. Okay, so this span is span of the purlin is nothing but spacing of the trusses. So a purlin is a continuous beam which is supported on a trusses and or a gable end. The end of the shade, this is the end of the shade. Suppose this is my last truss in the shade. This is called as a gable end of a structure. Okay, there are two gable ends, one here and another here. So purlin is considered as a continuous beam. Now in SDD1 you have already learned the continuous beam. You already know how much efforts are required to analyze a continuous beam. We have to adopt the moment distribution method or a similar type of a method to find out the moments and shear forces of a continuous beam. So it becomes a very complicated task. So purlins are designed as a continuous beam supported on the trusses. So analysis is important in case of these beams. Now the purlins are actually the beams, flexural members, and there are two types in the beams, laterally supported and laterally unsupported. Purlins are always designed like a laterally supported beam. So whenever we will start your fourth unit, that is design of beam, you will come to understand or you will come to know what is the meaning or what is the meaning of laterally supported beam and laterally unsupported beam. Okay, so this is just an introduction which I wanted to give you. The design we will see later on. Let us come to the load estimation first, how to calculate the dead load. Dead load. Now I will go back to this diagram and tell me how you will consider the dead load for the trusses. I want to find out the dead load of the trusses or dead load of the entire roofing system. What or which components weight you need to consider?
Roofing material,
Roofing
purlins,
material. Okay. Then purlin,
then the strut, purlin and strut.
purlin, and why strut only?
Then the strut load will come on the principal member of that, the tie member.
No, no. Truss is considered as a single unit. Entire
Okay.
truss is considered as a single unit. So you simply call it as a weight of the truss,
Okay, weight of the
right?
truss.
So there are three major components in any roofing system: the roofing material, purlin, and truss. So we have to consider the weight of all these three components, and that will comprise your dead load. So dead load consists of the three. First is the weight of sheeting material. Now the weight of sheeting material, you already know how to calculate the dead load of any given section, the dimension and its unit weight, right? So the weight of the sheet, how to find out its dimension? It will be the spacing of the purlin. Again, I will go back to this diagram. These are the two purlins and the roofing sheet is in between these two purlins and in between these two trusses. So I want to find out the weight of only this part of a sheet. Okay, the one sheet will rest on this area. So the weight of this sheet will be the spacing between the purlin multiplied by the unit weight. Now tell me what will be the unit for after considering this formula. Just tell me the unit. How will you find out the weight or what will the unit for the weight of a sheet by making use of this formula?
Kilonewton.
Kilonewton? Exactly kilonewton. What is the unit for unit weight? Unit weight of
किलोन्यूटन पर मीटर
meter
स्क्वेअर
cube.
आहे इथे मीटर हा मीटर क्यूब आहे पण स्पेसिंगनी मीटर स्क्वेअर होणार ते किलोन्यूटन पर मीटर स्क्वेअर.
Correct. Unit weight is in kilonewton per meter cube. Spacing, when you multiply, it is in meters, right? So kilonewton per meter cube into meter, you will get kilonewton per meter square. It means you're finding the weight of a sheet per meter square area. And that is what we want, right? Because I want to find out the weight of the sheet for this particular area. If I multiply by these two dimensions, it is giving me the area of this rectangle. In that case, I will get the weight of the material in terms of point load. Are you getting this? This is very, very important. Huh? How we are getting the load. Either it is per square or per area or per length or a point load. This is very important. Okay, is it clear? Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you design a purlin, just now we have discussed that purlins are designed like a beam. So on beam, we always calculate the load as a UDL. That is, it is a load per meter or per length, load per unit length. Okay. So in the form of a UDL, we have to find out the loading on a purlin. When we do the load calculation, we always do the load calculation for the purlins first, because that is the first member which carries the load first, right? So from roofing material, the entire load will be transferred to the purlin first. So whatever the load calculation you do, you have to do it as a UDL for purlins. But when the same load is transferred from purlin to the truss, it should be in the form of a point load, because for the truss, all the members are connected together at a single joint. So see, if you imagine or if you recall how you have analyzed a truss. When you analyze a truss, you have shown the load acting on a truss at every joint here, right? Do you remember this? Do you remember this?
Yes, ma'am.
So when analysis of truss is carried out, you have shown the load acting at every joint of a truss. So we always calculate the load acting on a truss in the form of a point load. We never calculate it as a UDL because the loads are supposed to act at the nodes only and not on the member. This is very important for trusses. And then only your each and every member will get subjected to axial force. Otherwise, each and every member will get subjected to bending also, movement also, shear force also. That we want to avoid. And hence, always the load is transferred on the truss at the joints. And that's why whatever this diagram, in this diagram, whatever is this is shown, the purlin is resting on the member. This is avoided practically. Otherwise, this member becomes a flexural member. The principal rafter you have to design like a flexural member and not a tension or compression member. Okay, so how you are placing various components in the structure in case of industrial shed, that also matters how you are designing a or how you need to design any specific component. Purlin, if you are locating only at the joint, then there will be only axial force in rafter. If you are placing on the member, the principal rafter will behave like a beam and you have to design it like a beam and not as an axial member. Okay, so as far as possible, purlin should be located on the joints. Now, if I want this and this purlin, I don't want this purlin, you have to adopt the specific spacing between the purlins. Now, the specific spacing between the purlins is, or the spacing between the purlin is limited to 2 meters maximum. So, the length of the principal rafter should be 2 meters maximum. In this fashion, you have to decide the configuration of a truss. Okay, so it is not easy to simply draw the diagram of a truss, whatever I have shown you, and then you start its analysis. It is not like that. How the purlins are resting, which materials we are using, all these matters to decide the configuration of truss. Okay, is it clear? I think I should stop now because it is almost 10. Only two parts in the dead load, or three parts rather in the dead load is considered: weight of sheeting material, then self weight of purlin, and then self weight of a truss. Okay, self weight of a truss. Initially, I have included all the slides to show you how the load on a purlin is calculated, and later on I have included the load acting, how to calculate the load acting on a truss. Okay, so I will explain everything step by step in detail in next practical. I think tomorrow's practical will not be sufficient to complete your estimation of wind load. It is a huge one. So I think next week also we need to club all the practical batches for the practical session. Okay, I will stop here today.
मॅडम ऑटोकॅडचं पण मागच्या वेळेला तुम्ही म्हणाले होते काहीतरी
अरे
चुकीचं
हो,
केलं होतं
ते
सगळ्यांनी, मग
राहिलंय.
ते नेमकं काय करायचं?
ऑटोकॅडचं काय?
ऑटोकॅड मध्ये तुम्ही म्हणाले होते की मागच्या वेळेला जसं हवंय तुम्हाला तसं नव्हतं सबमिट झालं, मग नेमकं ऑटोकॅड मध्ये कसं हवंय ड्रॉइंग ते एकदा सांगणार होते तुम्ही.
हो हो हो, सांगते मी. पहिला हे संपूया आपण लोड बीड, आणि मग ऍक्च्युअल तुमचं आता तुमचं ड्रॉइंगचं शेवटचं 8वी असाइनमेंट आहे ना, त्याला वेळ आहे.
नाही,
इथे
आता हे जे
तुम्हाला
तुम्ही म्हटले फर्स्ट शीट ते ऑटोकॅड मध्ये नाहीये का?
आहे ना, पण त्याला वेळ आहे ना रे. ही पहिली शीट सुद्धा तुम्हाला डिसाईड करायला हे सगळं तुम्हाला आधी माहित पाहिजे ना, कसं डिसाईड करायचं, कन्फिगरेशन्स कसे काढायचे वगैरे, आणि मग तुम्ही ते करणार. त्यामुळे त्याला वेळ आहे अजून. अँड आय वुड
हा,
सजेस्ट दॅट यू कन्सिडर द ड्रॉइंग ॲट द एंड ओनली. म्हणजे एक महिनाभर होऊ दे, मग महिन्याभराने तुम्ही ड्रॉइंगचा विचार करा.
चालेल चालेल.
Okay, so I will stop now here because the time is finished. You already started giving the attendance in chat box, but I will give you again the link. Please give me the attendance through that link. Okay, I have given you the link in the chat box. Please give the attendance through that link only. Okay, guys, so we will stop today and we'll meet tomorrow again. Again, tomorrow we will be having a same schedule. In the morning, we will have a lecture where I will start with your first unit, and in the practical session, again, all 3 batches will get clubbed together for the load calculation. Okay, I will keep the link open for next 5 minutes. Bye-bye. While coming for next lecture, everybody please bring IS 800. Huh? Please keep copy of IS 800 with you.
तुमचे PPTs तुमचे अपलोड कराल का आत्ताच?
हा.
म्हणजे आपल्याला एकदा बघता येतील आधीच.
हो, करते.